Good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Joshua. I'm going to be your presenter today. We're here to talk about calculating payroll, okay? And I'm sorry I don't have a drawing tool, but we're talking about the little check icon here in the bottom left of our image map that says calculate payroll, which is also available if I go up to payroll in the upper left and calculate payroll. It opens up the same window in either case. This is, again, very similar to the way, accounting works, donations works, membership works. The full functionality is in the upper left. The image map is in the center, is commonly accessed functions. So the first thing that when we click on calculate payroll, it opens a window called Calculate Payroll Wizard. Just an FYI, we kind of tossed this around. I've requested that our developers consider adding our screen numbers back to payroll here because, well, folks, I've been working with this software for a long time. For me personally as a technician, the numbers that are on your payroll that are in your current payroll are helpful, and I'm hoping we're going to get those added back. I've made that request. It's a reference point for me to help you. It also lets you know where you are, but we'll see. That'll be updated hopefully in a patch. I don't think it'll make it into the first release on that. So now we're down to our first screen, and as it is in your current payroll, it prompts us to enter a pay date or settlement date, the date that the employees are actually paid, and then it has had a pay period ended. It's now adding a pay period started date. It is my understanding that both the pay period started and pay period ended date is required for certain electronic filing or tax documentation now. So these are required fields. You have to enter both the pay date started, pay period started, and a pay period ended. Okay, they can be the same date, they can be different dates, but you have to enter both. So we're just going to enter, for our purposes here, pay period started of 9/26 with a pay period ended of 10/10 and a settlement date of 10/15. Okay. If I were to take out one of those fields, like say pay period ended, and try to click next, it's going to bark at me. Okay. So you've got to enter both on this here. Whether they're the same date or different is entirely up to you, but you got to enter both. Okay. Now we're going to go to next. So again, folks, similar type screens to what we have in our current payroll. The calculate payroll screen or screen or the second screen here. And we do have a few more windows in this than we do in our current payroll, but it becomes a little more intuitive or makes more sense, I think, the more you work through it. But here's where we choose our employees. So by default, it will want to default to your employees. You can pay contractors that are recorded and entered through payroll if you wish. Important to understand that we cannot calculate pay for employees and contractors simultaneously. We can choose employees or contractors, but we cannot calculate payroll for both, okay? We can also include terminated payees if we wish, or employees. We have, of course, our pay types, pay period or department that you can filter those out, filter employees to choose who you want to calculate payroll for, or I use this one more often than not, is choosing either all employees or specific employee contractor, okay? The one that has the greatest amount of control, essentially, okay? So if we leave it as all of our employees, again, we don't have any particular, everybody in our pay period or pay schedule is paid the same way, okay? So we're going to leave it as all employees, and we're going to simply click on next, okay? Again, no different than your current payroll. So this is, again, our Payroll Wizard number 3 screen, essentially, where it shows all of the employees that we've selected. It does have an include checkbox down the left-hand side, and it shows the last pay date. And per my last webinar that I had, a couple days ago on Tuesday, here's my new employee, Wile E. Coyote. Doesn't have a last pay date because we have not calculated a payroll for him. Okay, I've left him in here on purpose to kind of show you some functionality of how these screens work very similarly to the ones that you have now. So if I go, oh, you know what, I don't want to pay Wiley, I don't have to go back to calculate the previous calculate payroll window to do that. I can simply uncheck the include box. We're saying I'm omitting him from this pay run. But like I do have the ability, as I've always had in the current payroll, we have the ability to edit or enter or change the pay information for any employee on the fly. Okay, so as we look at somebody like Larry, our senior pastor, if I go to deductions, it's going to show his deductions, amounts or percentages, allowances, it's going to show the allowances that I have. And the same is true for any other employee. Okay, so Jimmy here is our part-time custodian. He's contributing $35 to his health insurance plan. But what I'm really here to do is to say, okay, Jimmy this time didn't work 40 hours, 45 hours last pay period. He only worked 40 and he used 4 hours of vacation time. So I'm changing down to paid time off and entering 4 hours, 4 units there. Okay. Again, always have the ability to edit these things on as you're calculating the payroll on the fly if you wish. Okay. So now I've made my desired changes, omitting an employee I didn't want. I'm going to go to next. So now we're now back at a screen that probably it would be our fourth window here, but it does incorporate things that really would have been kind of on a couple of other different screens in our current payroll software. So first of all, post to payroll would have been on our calculate payroll 6 screen. It would confirm the pay date or settlement date. All of these checkboxes, create EFT transaction file, transfer to accounting, print reports, all of that stuff would have been on a later screen. Browse payments is where we can dive in here and we can actually look at the breakdown, the withholding amounts, the net pay amounts for our employees. So here we've got Larry, our senior pastor, confirming that the minister box is checked. Notice nothing is showing up for Social Security or Medicare for him. He is marked as a minister. But when we go down to Jimmy, he's a lay person. He's not marked as a minister. All of his taxes, withholdings, his gross pay amounts are appearing here as they should. If I need to change something on this screen, folks, I can. But the system is withholding the taxes based on the setup of the employee file. As far as I'm concerned, all of these net check amounts, net pay amounts on the right-hand side are spot on and good. Okay. I can look at local miscellaneous taxes and or paid time off here. So if I go to Jimmy, this is telling me that it's included in this pay. He has 4 units applied this pay with 20 units available. Okay. And he has none accumulated for this pay period. So this screen looks good. I'm good. Okay. I'm leaving everything checked here. I intend on doing everything. We're going to create the EFT file for our direct deposit employees. I want you to see the full functionality of this. I'm transferring it into accounting. We are going to look at how the reports can be generated, and we are going to print checks or assign check numbers. Okay. If you have selections on here, like if you go, I don't care about the pre-posting reports, we can uncheck that and click Save as Default, and the software will leave print checks unchecked or print reports unchecked next time. If you have default selections, that's the only reason why you would check that. Okay, I'm not changing this, so I'm not going to check Save as Default, and we're going to simply click Next. Okay, so here's our pre-posting reports. If I leave these over here on the right and I click next, it will literally open up the preview of each one of the reports and allow me to print them consecutively. If I want to show the options page before those, I must click the box down here that says show report options forms. So when I check that, it will then, and I click next, it'll open up my pay period taxable earnings report options, from which then I have to, at which point then I need to click print to preview that. So basically, if you're wanting to print the reports, but you don't want to have the options, you can save yourself some time and mouse clicks by unchecking that. Okay. And again, you can save selections here as default. All right. So let's go ahead and take off our, take off our taxable earnings report, and we're going to leave our pay period, pay type earnings detail, and our pay period deductions report. Okay. And we're not going to do the show report options because I know what I'm going to get on these reports. I'm just wanting them to come up. So I click next. It does its gyrations. It opens up the pay type earnings detail. I can now send it to my printer in the upper left. Okay. And then when we close out, I've printed it. I close out using the red X. It now opens up my pay period deductions report. I can send it to my printer. Pretty slick here. And for just this pay period, for 10/15, send it to my printer, close out of that. Okay. Just more options. Okay. You have the options to decide how you want these windows to open or not, as the case may be. So here I am now, my EFT, my direct deposit recipients, generate EFT. Okay, if I uncheck those boxes right now, folks, basically what I'm saying is I don't want to pay these direct deposit employees, and it will not post a pay for them. So if you want to pay them, you need to leave those boxes checked. So we're going to leave those boxes checked, and it gives me the transfer number. Okay, so we're going to click next. Now it's asking me, where do I want to save the file that I'm going to send to my bank? Okay, so here it says EFT transaction data is generated and saved to the database. If you'd like to save the file now, browse to the folder and click save. Why not? I'm in the middle of doing this. Let me save myself some mouse clicks and some work, and I'm going to click browse, and I would choose the location where I want it to go. Simply click OK. Now this is where some of the changes in the new payroll, folks, are really sort of have to be explained here, is because otherwise, normally in our payroll, we might click next and the window would open that we want to do it to save the file. This is not the case in the new payroll. I have to click the Save File button. So when I click on that, it says now file name EFT 221015 _13.dat has been saved. It's only doing the _13 because I've done this several times. So I click OK on that. Okay. Now, if I want to print my pay stubs for my direct deposit employees, I must click Print Pay Stubs. I'm going to do that. So here it's saying, who do I want the stubs for? It's got my 2 employees. You bet. Those are the folks I want. Now I'm going to click Next. Now I've got a couple different layout formats I can choose if I wish, but we're just going to leave it as the default payroll check and click. And again, folks, you do have a check designer. These are stubs, not checks, okay? So you do have the ability to manipulate or edit the stubs for your direct deposit employees, and we're going to see that for checks here momentarily. But now I have to go down and click on Print Stubs. And notice now it says non-negotiable. I want to make sure I've got plain paper in my printer. Again, I'm going to send it to my printer in the upper left corner. Once those are printed, I would close out of the preview. Now I can click on Next. Okay, so it now says EFT print stubs is now complete. I click Finish. I'm now back to my Calculate Payroll process. Okay, my file's been saved. I'm ready to go to Next. Okay, so now it's opening up my regular employees that I want to print checks for. Okay, so now I'm going to enter the starting check number. Notice it auto sequences those in my check or reference number column. I can enter a memo for everybody's check if I want, okay? And I can pre-print the check register here, albeit the pay's not posted yet. And I can then simply click Next. Similar to our previous window, I've got a check designer and I must click Print Checks to physically send it to my check stock. So just an FYI, folks. A common question, and we may be getting this here in the questions that are being asked, is, are my default layouts that are brought in from accounting going to be available here for payroll? The simple answer to that is no. Why? Because the layouts are different. Paycheck stubs have different information requirements than accounting checks do. So if I click on the check designer, we're going to open that up, and you can see here we've got allowance detail subreport, deductions. Accounting doesn't have this. Local taxes, paid time off, pay hours and rates detail. So these are different check layouts than the checks we've got in accounting. They're different. So you do have a designer, you can manipulate them, but they're not going to be the same checks that you get from accounting. Okay, I mean the same, 3-part check, sure, but in terms of what prints on each of the stubs, they're not going to be the same. Okay, so when I'm ready, I'm going to click Print Checks. Here's my preview of my checks. I'm going to again send it to my printer in the upper left corner. I'm going to kind of trick it here into thinking it went to a printer. And then we're just going to cancel out of this. And similarly to what we have in our current payroll, I go to Next, okay, and it's going to pop up with the window, did the checks print correctly? Okay, so I have the ability to put a check or checks back into the print queue if they didn't print correctly. So if none of them did, I can do a sweeping uncheck of the printed correctly, or I can go down the list and I can uncheck the names of the checks of those employees that the checks didn't print correctly for, and then it'll put them back into the print queue for me to print checks. Okay. We're not going to go over that today. So we're going to make our assumption that the checks did print correctly. So we're going to tell the software they did. So we simply click next, and it says the following checks were printed on 10/15 to Huntington Bank checking. We're going to click finish. We're now back at our calculate payroll completed with a summary. So a print summary says, okay, payroll for October 15th has been posted. The EFT transaction file has been saved. The file was created. Reports were printed, and the following checks have been printed. Okay, and we're going to simply click finish. Now, the problem that I discovered in this is that this would normally open, folks, our transfer to accounting window. That's the problem that I discovered in this that my developers are now tasked with figuring out, okay? I did say I wanted to transfer this into accounting. The window didn't open automatically. It's okay. I can still access that, but we're going to do that. We're going to have to go up here to special functions and transfer to accounting. And here under my pay dates, I've got my 10/15 pay. And as we can clearly see, it looks remarkably similar to my current payroll, where I see my employees, what their description is, what accounts are debiting, what accounts are crediting, for what description it is. And just like I have in my current payroll, simply click transfer here in the bottom right to transfer that into my books in accounting. And I'm going to say yes to that. Transfer completed. If I click yes on the print function on that, it now opens my accounting transfer report and allows me to print a record of the transaction numbers. Did they post into accounting? What accounts were debited and credited for what amounts? Check numbers, what have you. Even my direct deposit employees should be included in here as well. Okay. So Larry was in here, no check or reference number because he's EFT employee, what have you. Okay. And then I would just simply send that to my printer in the upper left here to complete that and print that and keep that for my records. Okay. And then when I'm done, I simply cancel out of it, X out of my transfer to accounting window. And that, folks, in a nutshell, is a quick 20-minute tour through our new Calculate Payroll screens.